Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are tuning in. Thank you for those that are following us on Facebook, social media. Remember, it is a podcast. We'd love to have you download the podcast if you have not done so yet. Share it with your friends, family, coworkers, reradiolive.com. You go to iTunes, Stitcher, any of those places and get the podcast to download as well. For almost, actually it's over 8 years. I keep saying almost 8 years, but I think in September might be 9 years.
At least 8, if not 9.
Because I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was September 2011.
Okay.
That I started the radio show.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. So, man, long time.
Getting old. No,
I would like to think that we're offering some great information along the way. Education information is our focus.
Remember we used to have to drive out to Fremont to do the live shows?
I do.
That was a good time.
I miss the live shows.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these days we'll do some live radio again. We could do it right here from the studio, obviously, so we don't have to drive there. But I do remember that.
Yeah. You used to do that every day.
Man, what an idiot I was. I don't know how many years I drove every single day. No, it was fun, and, it was a good experience. And I'll tell you, I would recommend, now that I look back, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that if you do a radio show, you should start and do at least a while in the radio studio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
You get the feel of everything,
yeah.
and the flow and all. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
There's just something fun about that. I could see why people have kind of the energy rush and adrenaline for TV or radio, especially when it's live or anything live, because as simple as it might be, or you might be an expert in this particular area, it's still live, and you need to be kind of on your toes.
Yeah.
And aware, and that you don't say anything or act stupid. Or
I remember when we did one show, when we getting calls was always fun, and we're totally going on a tangent, but that's my fault. But remember we did one show on what questions to ask a real estate agent when you're hiring them or something like that, and we got calls we got blown up that show, and then that was really fun because then the interesting things people would bring up or disagree. I like the disagreement part.
I do too. I think just real quick while we're on that theme. I think back that was the one we got a lot of calls. There was a show I'll never forget I did on mold.
Oh, okay.
And I got a ton of calls.
Yeah, I believe it.
One guy, I never forget, it was so funny. He's going, well, I think I found some mold on my boat. What should I do about it? It was the funniest thing.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Anyway, it was good stuff. The live radio was fun, so maybe one of these days we'll do that again. Before we jump into the show, we're gonna Mike and I are going to talk about really preparing yourself for the 2020 housing market, only because there's a bunch of changes. We've been talking about that the last couple of months, and they're here. So we're going to talk about those and kind of go through. These are for me.
Yeah.
Trying to catch my breath here.
Are you choking up over there? You choking up about the housing market?
Choking up about the housing market. Thinking about the guy with his mold. Anyway, we're going to talk about preparing for 2020 because Mike and I have been, discussing this for a while, and kind of not to say we're warning you, but we're kind of warning you again the last several months that things are changing, inventory's low, be prepared for your pre-approvals, but more importantly, we have been talking about, I know for sure, and the great thing about recording these things, you go back and listen to them and tell people to go back and reference them, that, Mike, is that for several months, we've been talking about the possibility of the market flipping back to a hardcore seller's market. I'm not saying it's here now, but are you seeing a little bit of signs?
Well, yeah, I am. I mean, a couple of instances. I just was with a top selling agent across the street here before I came over here to do the podcast. And she just wrote an offer, and she's an excellent agent. She wrote an offer on a teardown in Cupertino that by the deadline yesterday, it had already had 15 or 18 offers, and it was going at least 15% above the last comp, which was fixed up.
Wow.
So this house is a teardown listed in Cupertino, listed for $1.4 million, $1.4 million-ish. I think it's going to sell for $1.8 million plus.
Wow.
and that's higher than the last comp, which was beautiful. So that was happening. Then I've had other agents reporting to me, like in Blossom Valley, that there was like 60 to 80 groups through the open house weekend. Even at multi-unit properties, I had some clients out looking at an open house on I think it's 7 or 8 units, packed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there.
No, it's changing, and one of the reasons we want to do this show again, we'll probably repeat something similar the next couple of weeks or months because it's so important. As I'm seeing the big changes too in the finance we're doing, the offers that are being out there. The other thing I want to kind of go through is my take on. Someone might say, "Well, why is this happening? What do you think the reason is?" We've been talking about it for a while, but I think it's a combination of things. One, last year was this, I would call this kind of flat downturn a little bit. Nothing major, but, it was flat, right? Some areas went down 10, 15, 20% even, depending where the areas were. Some stayed flat. And then here we came into 2020. There was a lot of uncertainty of trade wars, impeachment, what's going on with the market politically. There was even some potential wars with all kinds of stuff happening. So I get the feeling through the settling now, and then people, Mike, I think the other thing I was reading several things the last couple of days, which kind of the light bulb went on too. People are feeling good.
Yeah.
Now because they've had this huge run up.
Sure.
Not only 401ks, investments, savings, probably a decent run up on the housing market too. If you've been in your home for 6 to 10 years, you're seeing that appreciation. You might even see it recently again. And for that, people are feeling better about doing a lot of these different things.
I just heard something on the radio today that I think is really relevant to this conversation is consumer debt is up to almost the highest it was before the 2008 crash, which was kidding. I think it's something like $600 billion, which a lot of that's mortgage debt, but meaning it's up to like $600 or $700 billion, whereas
probably
like
trillion.
It was about $1 trillion before 2008.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's getting close back up to that debt.
No kidding.
And so what that means is people feel good about spending, about borrowing, all that, and so I think it's a sign of the times.
So you couple that with all the stuff we just talked about, and then on top of that, you have interest rates at near all-time lows. They're really, really close to all-time lows. Yeah. So when you put the perfect storm together, this is the reason why, again, not to say I told you so, but we've been talking about this for over a year, and you probably listen to a lot of podcasts. I get frustrated. I'm like, get out there, buyers, and go, because we all went through this several years ago when it was a terrible, tough seller's market, and buyers couldn't get into homes. Anyway, I don't want to jump the gun or be an alarmist, but we could go into another market like that if we don't get a bunch more homes on the market, right?
Well, yeah,
what do we got right now?
So right now, let's put it in perspective. There's only 617 single-family homes for sale in the entire county of Santa Clara.
Low.
So think about it this way. How many, we have all the major employers in Silicon Valley, the Apples, the Googles, the Cisco's, all of those. How many thousands of employees work at those places making a lot of money?
Right.
And so let's just say a certain percentage of those are in the market to buy a home. On top of, it doesn't have to be tech people, but I got to imagine it's more than 617 people.
Oh, yeah. No, it is.
That is nothing. And we all know how, and this is just a subset of the other markets that are around here. I'm not even talking about the Peninsula or San Francisco or other counties around, or Alameda County, which I'm sure is doing well too.
Right.
But 617 total, which is from Milpitas all the way down to Gilroy, all the way up to Palo Alto and the East Foothills. That is a large area to only have 600 homes for sale.
It is. There's a lot. And speaking about employees, Mike just put me in a perfect position here.
I'm setting you up.
Got to remember to discuss and remind everybody this show is brought to you by Bundle Select. Go to bundleselect.com. Find out why companies like Salesforce, Visa, Adobe, who else? El Camino Hospital, El Camino Health, many more, Beneplace. We have over 6 million employees now on the platform. And so if you're an employee listening to this show, encourage your HR people to go on to bundleselect.com. If you're someone in HR or benefits, give us a call or go to bundleselect.com and find out more information. Find out why millions of employees are opting in to sign up for Bundle Select. It's a great way to bundle all your real estate and lending services. So bundleselect.com, as Mike would say. The employees. It was perfect time to say that.
There you go.
All you employees. So back to this market now. I would say, again, we're going to echo today. We're going to talk more in the next several weeks. If you're, let's talk a little bit about if you're a buyer, be prepared. And not only be prepared to be underwritten approved, we talked about it, not a pre-qualification, approved, really approved with someone that knows what they're doing. And number two, be prepared now in a market like this, and this is where, Mike, I want to have you talk a little bit about how that conversation would go. Let's do a little scripting, or tell us, when you're sitting down with a buyer, a year ago, it was kind of great, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you got these choices.
Yeah.
We might even be able to put a contingent offer in. So what does that conversation look like now?
I think the conversation now is you really got to understand what contingencies there are in an offer, and how are you going to be able to make your offer as competitive as humanly possible. So make sure you ask that question to your agent as to what do these contingencies mean if X. So, for example, a lot of times, like you said, underwritten, approved, there's a loan contingency. Is there a possibility of not having that loan contingency or not? I know there's risk with everything.
There is.
Okay? But is then the big thing, and I want to ask you this about appraisals, okay, is there an appraisal contingency? If so, if you waive that appraisal contingency, what is the risk you're putting on the table with waiving that appraisal contingency? And we can do a whole podcast just on that. But the question I have for you, Joe, is, are you guys seeing appraisals come in under value yet, or do you think that's going to come if a lot of this craziness continues the next couple of weeks?
Not yet, but I do think there's a strong possibility over the next several months. If we see this, it might take a while for the market to catch up with these over offers, the bidding, and so on and so forth. So you're right. One of the biggest things is appraisals. So the thing to be careful with if you're really trying to put a non-contingent offer is you really, to me right now, you have to be careful, especially if a place is being bid up, because that means there is a possibility, again, if there's a place on the market for just under $1 million and it looks like it's going to be bid up to 1.2, you have to be careful, because if you're putting 20% down or less, you could put yourself in a real tough position. Yeah. So suggestions are this. If you're in a market right now, make sure, again, I stress this over and over, make sure you're working with a real estate agent that really understands the market and a lender that understands the market, because they're going to have to educate you on this stuff, and they're going to have to walk you through it. Okay, we're about ready to put this offer. What does it look like? So Mike would say, for instance, Mike, what would you, let's kind of role play in the terms of you and I are working with a mutual client, right? And so you're sitting down with them, talk through them what you would do, and then I'll kind of do the same on the lending side to set expectations. Yeah,
well, what I would go over first is talk about what intel I've gotten from the listing agent as to what offers are coming in, what do they look like, what's the competition like, because then you have to structure your offer based on that intelligence you get. Yeah. And granted, we hope that intelligence is either true or accurate and not total BS.
And what if you get unintelligent information?
Yeah, well, let's plan another show. Unintelligent. There's a lot of unintelligence out there, I'll tell you that much. But typically you can feel that out, and a lot of this is a relationship business, and so anyways, you gotta figure out how you're going to best structure your offer. Then from there, you have to understand the contingencies of the offer. What are the risks with getting rid of some of those contingencies if that's what you decide to do, and is that a risk that you're willing to take and or can afford to do? And then doing your due diligence up front, meaning reading the disclosures, looking at the inspections, because the likelihood of you having that contingency at this point, if it's a competitive offer and they have all that stuff up front, it's pretty unlikely, So you got to really look at all of that. And then structuring the right offer, the right package, the right lender, talking to the Joes of the world and putting together the right, really a total pre-approval, totally underwritten, proof of funds, the offer, the love letter, the love story, all that love crap. You got to get all that out there if it's an emotional sale and make it a whole package to put together.
Well, I'll tell you, I'd have to eat crow a little bit here, because I, for one, have laughed a lot over the years of the love letters.
Yeah.
But I would just, as part of a transaction, it was a perfect example of why you should entertain him, even though sometimes you could argue it doesn't make a difference. You could speak to this more than I do. But I'll give you an example. Obviously, I'll leave the details out for the people's, privacy. But there was clients that were purchasing this home, and it was, the more expensive home, $3.6 million. and there was a couple of multiple offers, not a ton, but a few, and they were pretty similar in terms of the offers. Actually, one offer was a little better than the other in terms of the the terms, close, and all that. Long story short, the reason why the sellers chose, even though it wasn't maybe not as attractive as an offer, same amount, but the conditions were a little different. The reason they chose the couple that we're working with is that they were in the house for 20 plus years, raised a child with the child was disabled. I'm not sure exactly what kind of disabled they were, what kind of conditions in terms.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, the couple that was buying the home, in their letter, they described how they wanted the house. And coincidentally, listen to this, they have a disabled child.
Yeah.
But listen to this, the two children on each side, they had the same name.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's crazy.
The agent was telling me, Joe, it was crazy because when they saw that, they said, it doesn't matter. We want to sell to these people.
And
so
that,
you don't know.
I could tell
right?
you countless stories. I helped an FHA buyer beat out a cash offer that was higher on a condo because he went to the same church as the sellers, and he wrote it, and he knew, and he did. They kind of knew each other, but he put all that in his letter. That happened years ago. I mean, even my own house, the last one. The seller, she passed away, but she was in real estate for 40 years.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And I went up against 2 other offers. I presented it in person. I told them my whole story, all this stuff, and I beat out, I think, a higher offer because of it. That happens a lot more often than you might hear about.
Right.
Absolutely. So, anyways, that's a part of it. But at the end of the day, oftentimes money talks too. I mean, if you're a couple $100,000 under and you got a good story, like I don't know if that how much that affects it, but yeah, right now you got to assess the risk involved in, especially if you have loan and appraisal and other things, and you're not a cash buyer, because cash buyers can pretty much do whatever they want. Right. You really got to assess risk right now, and then package a right offer.
Yeah. So the other thing on the lending side, I'm going to address the appraisal a little bit, and I would coach someone, if I'm sitting down right now and we have you approved, and let's say you're putting 20% down, I'm going to be very careful and walk you through what could happen, why you have to be careful with putting 20% down. I would encourage most people, regardless of if you're thinking you're losing or not, unless you have the additional money, unless you really want this house, to put an appraisal contingency in there in a market like this, because there's a chance it could be overbid and it could be ran up. Now, the way you could avoid that, you might say, Joe, well, how do we go into an offer and avoid the appraisal contingency? And as far as I'm concerned, financing contingency is kind of funny. I know they're good and they make sense because there may be something with the property you don't know when they're when they're approved and all that. I get it, but for the most part, if we do our job up front, you could almost remove any financing contingencies, really. Yeah, I think, unless there's something weird about what might be happening with the property. But on the appraisal contingency, what you really have to be careful with is be prepared. If you don't want that contingency, then you either maybe have some money, maybe you have 20% down, but you have access to more money, saying, okay, Joe, if it comes in a little over $1 million, remember the lender is only going to finance 80% in this case. Let's say you're putting 20% down. 80% of the contract, okay? I'm sorry, not the contract. They're going to put 80% of the appraised value of that property, not the contract. So if you end up paying 1.2 and the value comes in at 1.1, you're going to have to make up that $100,000 difference
in cash.
So
you have to have a contingency with with reserves.
Either that or have some money aside going, I'm willing to put up more money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other piece of that.
Yeah, or a gift, maybe, right?
Yep.
That could work. So that's really important, because what's at risk here, you might be asking yourself, really what's at risk is your deposit, which is typically 3% of the value of the contract. Right. So we're talking about 30 G's.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of cheddar. And so $30,000, it's not a guarantee that you lose it. Everyone always asks, like, every seller I always work with, like, oh, I'm definitely getting that. Nothing's a guarantee in a contract. You have to go through mediation, arbitration. But if you do back out, if the appraisal goes haywire and you back out, you are more than likely going to lose your deposit, especially if the seller can prove that you did it because of that, and they have liquidated damages on getting into contract again and maybe losing money through the process. So it's not a guarantee, but it's a high likelihood.
Yeah. So the appraisal is a really big deal. So we would sit down and we'd discuss that. We'd coordinate with the real estate agent, make sure everybody's on the same page. And you always have a threshold, too, about what that's going to look like. The other thing is, on the financing side, we've talked about this several times, but I can't stress it enough. so many people don't think outside the box when you're really going out to put together a strategy for a purchase. And what I mean by that is, if you have to sell a home, or you are thinking about selling a home and then buying, that is a whole different thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too in the next couple of minutes, because that is something that most people aren't educated on, and what kind of strategies and options you have available to you, to make that happen. I would say, before we talk about the sell and buy piece of it, the last thing is make sure that you have a relationship and a conversation with the real estate agent and what the max is too. Mike, talk a little bit about what I mean by this is, let's say you're representing someone, you put an offer and you put it in for $1 million. How does it work when the buyer says, you know what, Mike, I'm willing to pay up to 1.1. Mm-hmm. So how does that work with you, and then how does it work with the listing agent, knowing that might be the possibility?
Yeah, I think that's a loaded question. But I think you really got to put your best in a market like this where it might be a competitive
So you're saying if you're 1-1, you should do 1-1 instead of saying I could go. How does that work?
I'm not necessarily saying that. There's certain ways you can phrase a question to a listing agent.
Okay.
To figure out where you think the offers are going to go and make a guess at it. And then there's certain ways you can phrase when submitting your offer, like, hey, this is a really good offer. You sell their offer, right? But also you could always leave a door open that, hey, look, if there's other people involved, if there's a possibility, like keep me in the loop, give us a chance type of thing. So there's certain ways that you can go about doing that. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it is. That makes sense.
Sometimes if it's a house that they're desperate to have, or they have to have it, and it's a matter of them making a decision on $1.075 and $1.1 million, you got to just go for it. Okay. And that money is going to get sunk into real estate, and you'll be fine through the long term. So I think it's all very situational, but there's ways to go about figuring out what exactly you're going to put forward.
Yeah.
With your best foot first.
So the next couple of minutes before we wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about the scenario where someone's selling their home, which becomes a little more complicated. Obviously there's more moving parts when they come to you and they come to me and they say, hey, listen, we're about ready to put our house on the market, but we're not sure about this crazy market. And that's the whole chicken or egg thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I sell the house first and then figure out what I'm going to do, or do I go out and start looking?
It's a scary thought.
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one. It's a scary thought. I mean, like you and I are working with a couple right now that had a fallback option where they're going to live with his mom for a while. They're going to sell their condo first and then live with the mom, bank the money. And then they have that option. They're okay with living with the mom. Some people are for now. We'll see how long that lasts. We'll see how motivated they get. But, they're okay with that. And then they're going to go out and then they'll have that money on hand. That way they don't have to make offers contingent upon the sale of their condo. That's already over and going to be over and done with. Now, unless something comes up that's amazing in the next week or two, and then they're going to want to probably do an offer, but we'll see. But that's a nice fallback option to have.
Okay.
Making the contingent offer upon the sale of your home is an option. It's not the most attractive option to a seller because there's other hurdles that the buyer has to go through to buy their home.
Right.
But that is an option. That's basically it. What am I forgetting right now?
Well, I mean,
sell the home, close it, and then make offers, or sell upon the contingency, or the other thing is to sell the home. Sorry, this is where I got lost. I was thinking so much about living with my mother-in-law. I was like getting blindsided. It made me really nervous. Then there's the other option is putting the house on the market and then going out and actively looking for other houses and selling that house. And then hopefully maybe in this market you can negotiate a long close of escrow, a long rent back, so that it gives you time to go out and find a property. That is the riskiest option of all of them because you don't know if you're going to find the house you like, and then you might make not a bad decision, but maybe a decision you wouldn't have otherwise made if you had more time to think about it and pick a home that you actually love. So that's definitely the riskiest one, is to sell your house and then try to go find something without closing it. That's definitely riskier.
Yeah. The other piece is to try to leverage or use your existing property to not have any contingencies on a purchase, and we'll go through that just briefly, not to confuse people. I would say the best thing to do is call us if you want more information about this, but I want to open those eyes of the people out there that understand there are options. And so we've talked about cross-collateral deals before. The one that I'm doing right now, which arguably, it's funny, depending on the clients, this one's even better than a cross-collateral deal. I'm doing one right now where instead of doing a cross, Mike, they're buying this place for 3.6. They had 10% down. Where do we get the other 10%? How could we do this? They have this home in Santa Clara that's worth probably 1.8, and they owe very little on it, like $100,000. So instead of crossing it, what we did was we got a private note, got a private loan on it, for $400,000. So now they have roughly 20% down, and I'm able to do it for them for 20% down.
That's awesome.
And they make good money, so they qualify for not only the private note but the payment. And now we're going to close that next week. They're going to then put their house on the market, sell it, and probably within 4 to 6 months they'll come in and pay down that loan.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so and it's a lot cheaper than a cross.
Yeah.
The cross sometimes gets people a little bit nervous because you're paying for 2 appraisals and they're putting liens on both properties and different things like that. Even though it's a great tool, the point I'm making here is that there are options that could make you have a stronger offer on a more competitive offer when you're looking to buy, if you understand the type of options you have with your house that you're selling. Now, some people may not have that much equity. I'm not suggesting, right? I mean, if you're looking to sell your home and it's selling for $1 million and you owe $800,000 on it, you don't have enough equity there really to stretch much at all. But I would say this: the rule of thumb is, Mike, if your exiting property or departing residence has 50% more equity or more, right? So if it's worth $1 million, you owe $500,000 or less, you might be a candidate to do either a private note or a cross to help you then make a non-contingent offer.
I love the private note. I love that.
It's great. I wish I would have thought about it more. I mean, even though I knew about it, all of a sudden I'm like, well, it doesn't always have to be a cross. If they could qualify, and the private notes, they're good. They're there for the purposes. And how long is the term of the note? Is it negotiable, or because what makes it different than a HELOC? Well, no, the note. What's great about so the note is they're in this case they're borrowing $400,000. They're charging them 1.5. Okay. And the interest rate's about, I think it's like almost 8.89 or something. Interest only. Yeah. There's no prepayment penalty. Okay. So, but they'll probably make at least maybe 2 or 3 payments on that. Yeah. And then they'll pay it off. It's kind of like a hard money note. It is basically pretty much. Yeah. But the hard money these days, if you have the right, if it's a good risk, when you look at the cost of that, right? So that's what, $7,500 in points, and then let's say they make a couple of payments. So the bottom line is, when you look at that, let's say you're in it for 10 or 12 grand. Yeah, to make it happen. To make it happen and get the home that you really want. Totally. Yeah. I mean, because you're willing to pay that and then some, and overpayment or overbidding. Right. So why not do it to make the damn deal happen? No. So act now, and seriously, if you're listening to this, forward it to those family, friends, coworkers, because it's a great time in the market right now, and I am concerned. I mean, I think it's going to be a great, great market. What I mean by that is I think there will be more homes that are coming on the market. Here's what will happen. A lot of people will see the market kind of starting to head north. That will propel most people, or some people that had second thoughts, then to start putting their homes on the market. So I do think that I think this could be a really, really strong year for both this year. I think my prediction, here's a bold prediction, right. I think we'll be at least double inventory by June. Wow. So at least 12 to 1,500 maybe? Yeah. I think we'll be at least double that we are now. Unless people keep scooping up that inventory. Yeah, but I think it's going to come on. It's going to keep up with that. I think we'll be about double in June. Yeah. And anything before we go, what are your thoughts about, are the condos, I know for the most part they've always been kind of secondary. What I mean by that is people will typically say, gosh, I'd really love a single family, but I'll get into a condo if I have to. Any difference in that market, is pretty much the same? Low? Yeah, it's low. It's really low, actually. Really? I mean, only like 200. Whereas typically we've been hovering about 300 to 400 for the last few months, so that's low. So maybe that tells me that they've gotten gobbled up a little bit recently too. All right. So, all right. Again, if you need more information about financing, get approved. The team here, 408-838-9060. You could always email Joe at reradiolive.com. Mike, how do they reach you? Yep, MikeDsells.com or 408-630-0101. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care. Again, remember to pass the podcast along to all others. Take care. Have a great Pass the torch. There you go. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at reradiolive.com.